Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News, and my name is Bahram Gaffarov. Uzbekistan has channeled over $1.9 billion towards the healthcare sector year to date. The past several years also saw huge funds. However, only 13% of the recently held questionnaire participants noticed a change in medical facilities. Problems in the sphere and tasks for the future were on the agenda of a video conference chaired by President Shavkat Mirziyoyev on Tuesday.
Uzbekistan's healthcare sector has been considered below standard until recently. However, the situation is set to be improved, as funds allocated this year are 3 times higher than the figure in 2017. Mirziyoyev highlighted 5 areas of the sector subject to transformations this year. The first is to turn the primary league of medicine into a system for the early detection and treatment of diseases. The second is to increase the volume and radically improve the quality of narrow-profile medical services through specialized centers. Third is to eradicate red tape and corruption through digitalization. Fourth, to expand private sector participation in all areas of medicine. Fifth, to raise the level of knowledge of medical workforce and to develop medical education and science. Mirziyoyev stressed the importance of treating chronic diseases in primary care, especially strengthening the prevention of cardiovascular and gastrointestinal diseases. He proposed the introduction of a package of free medical services for the treatment of diseases in primary care. World Health Organization is planned to be involved in improving the qualifications of family doctors. Instructions were given to provide regional medical institutions with high-tech equipment and medical devices. Mirziyoyev also urged to simplify and digitize the licensing process for private medical organizations. Until November 1st this year, all polyclinics in the capital city were instructed to completely abandon the paperwork. Trillions are allocated every year. International loans are raised for the healthcare system. Our people should feel the effect of these funds, said Mirziyoyev.
The UN General Assembly was in its 75th plenary session on May 18, unanimously adopted a resolution declaring the Aral Sea region a zone of ecological innovations and technologies through which it encourages research and scientific advisory activities to recover and improve the environment, preserve natural resources and enhance the quality of life in the region. The initiative was put forward by Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev.
Uzbekistan's representative in the UN described the drying of the Aral Sea as one of the most serious environmental problems of our time. The deteriorating environmental situation in the region will have far-reaching socio-economic, humanitarian and health implications. He warned, noting that the volume of the Aral Sea, the 4th largest lake in the world until the 1960s, has decreased at an alarming rate. The crisis has prompted Uzbekistan and the United Nations to establish a unified platform for mitigating its consequences. Delivering an explanation of position, the representative of Kyrgyzstan said that while he had joined consensus, concerns remain over the effectiveness of funds being directed towards addressing the situation in the Aral Sea. The Assembly called on member states, the United Nations and international financial institutions to develop and implement environmentally sound technologies, as well as energy and water-saving technologies in line with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.
The design work at the Uzbekistan GTL synthetic liquid fuel plant under construction has been fully completed, the press service of Uzneftegaz has reported. This plant is expected to be the largest production project in Central Asia.
The design work was fully completed. Some 8,000 workers and engineers, 522 units of special equipment were involved in the construction and installation work. In February 2021, the flare system and steam boilers were put into operation. The plant began receiving fuel gas in March. Korean companies Hyundai Engineering and Construction and Enter Engineering are the general constructors of the project. GTL has an annual capacity to process 3.6 billion cubic meters of gas, produce 1.5 million tons of high-quality synthetic liquid fuel, more than 307,000 tons of jet fuel, 724,000 tons of diesel fuel, 437,000 tons of naphtha, 53,000 tons of liquefied gas. Petroleum products delivered by the project are to substitute for $1 billion worth of imports annually.
Uzbekistan is soon to ink an agreement on joining the international trade promotion program, World Logistics Passport. This initiative was put forward by the Emirati company DP World at a recent meeting organized by the Uzbek Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade.
The sides touched upon the creation of a dry port in the city of Navoy and building a large logistics hub and a free economic zone in the capital. The meeting also analyzed the agenda on developing the network of logistics centers in the capital and the regions of the country in a bid to multiply the volume of freight traffic passing through the territory of Uzbekistan, facilitate the access of domestic manufacturers to foreign markets, and strengthen Uzbekistan's position as a key logistics hub in Central Asia. The Emirates side expressed its readiness to provide advanced software and technological solutions in e-commerce of the country. World Logistics Passport is an international program to expand trade opportunities between emerging markets. The initiative aims to remove non-tariff barriers to international trade and improve the efficiency of the supply chain by optimizing freight costs and reducing the time it takes to move goods. Since its launch in 2019, the program has increased the volume of trading operations carried out by its participants by 10%.
Animal rights activists from Angren and Al-Malik have made an appeal to society for the protection of animals, Meherva Oqubad, with a request to deal with callous attitude towards homeless animals by the trapping service employees. Eyewitnesses cite specific situations of outrages committed in front of children.
One of the statements says that on March 22 in the middle of the day, people in the green Damas car drove and brutally killed animals. They killed cats and dogs with firearms, doing this in front of underage children. The next appeal came from people who watched as the trapping service staff strangled the dogs with metal garrots in front of the children coming from school. When asked to provide identity documents, they insulted the citizens. Moreover, the woman's own dog was captured by a stranglehold by the distraught trappers. During the attempt to rescue her, one of the citizens was knocked down to the ground, received severe injuries, as a result of which she was in intensive care with a diagnosis of hypertensive crisis.
Uzbekistan on Wednesday received another batch of Chinese Uzbek vaccine comprised of 500,000 doses. A day earlier, the country received 1 million doses of it. The initial deliveries were in April and March. The country has so far received a total of 3.5 million doses of the vaccine. Uzbekistan has so far received 660,000 doses of AstraZeneca and 100,000 doses of the Russian Sputnik V. Since April the 1st to date, 1.5 million doses of coronavirus vaccine were used in the country. In a bid to address environmental issues in Uzbekistan, USAID plans to launch a 5-year $24 million worth WAVE project. This was discussed during an online meeting chaired by Uzbekistan's embassy in the USA, jointly with the newly appointed permanent director of the USAID mission in Uzbekistan, Mikhaila Meredith.
In his speech, Uzbek ambassador to the United States, Javlon Vahabov, congratulated Mikhaila Meredith on her new role to lead U.S. Agency for International Development mission to Uzbekistan. The parties discussed the joint programs aimed at boosting the country's economic growth, as well as providing employment opportunities, along with the USAID agribusiness development activity to support the Republic's private sector. The joint project would help the Republic create jobs in the formal economy for its burgeoning workforce, as well as introduce advanced agricultural techniques. In her mission, Mikhaila Meredith would deal with so many priorities aligned with what Uzbekistan's government is addressing that include facilitating community immunization campaign, mitigating the RLC disaster, advancing regional connectivity, agriculture, education and health sectors. The online meeting also discussed the collaboration aimed at providing the Uzbek population with Pfizer, Moderna, as well as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine supplies. In a bid to address environmental issues, USAID would soon launch a 5-year, $24 million worth WAVE project in the run-up to the 2021 presidential elections. The head of the U.S. mission also noted the readiness of the agency to finance the programs of the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. In October 2020, the U.S. government announced the opening of a full-fledged mission in Uzbekistan to support the country's major economic, political, and social reform program.
Frightened citizens of the Israeli coastal city of Ashkelon ran for cover on Tuesday as rockets exploded overhead. As the cross-border violence between Israel and Palestinian militants extended into a 9th day, with no end in sight. Just a few miles away, Natanel Sharvit, his wife, and 4 children have been living in an Israeli rocket shelter under the near-constant threat of attacks launched by Hamas and Islamic Jihad from the Gaza Strip, just 12 miles from home.
The kids suffer from anxieties. They're afraid to sleep in our home. As you can see, we are staying in the shelter and hoping for the best, that this situation will be over and we'll be able to get back to normal.
Sharvit and his family are no more in control of the air war raging above their heads than the Palestinian civilians living on the other side of the Israeli military barrier that separates North Gaza from southern Israel. Many Palestinians have fled to schools run by the UN's refugee agency, like this one in Gaza City, where classrooms have become dormitories for the displaced. The UN Relief and Works Agency estimates that 47,000 Palestinians are now camped out in the 58 education establishments it runs in Gaza. Israeli airstrikes have pounded Gaza day and night since the conflict flared on May 10th. And Israel says the strikes will continue as long as necessary to destroy Hamas military sites and kill its leaders. Gaza medical officials said more than 200 Palestinians have been killed and more than 1,400 have been wounded. In Israel, authorities say 12 people have died as of Tuesday.
Okay, here we go. You ready?
See it, sir.
You ready?
U.S. President Joe Biden took his electric vehicle plan to the test track in Michigan on Tuesday, where he hit the accelerator of Ford's new electric F-150 Lightning truck during a visit where he touted a plan to invest in American electric automakers. The electric Ford truck still camouflaged ahead of its official reveal on Wednesday.
This sucker's quick.
How's it drive? How does it feel? Would you buy one of these?
I would.
Biden was at the Rouge Electric Vehicle Center in Dearborn to make the case for his $174 billion electric vehicle plan, calling for government grants for new battery production facilities.
We're going to set a new pace for electric vehicles.
Biden vowed to reverse what he called the Trump administration's short-sighted rollback of vehicle emissions standards while pushing for passage of his ambitious $2.3 trillion jobs and infrastructure bill.
They announced Infrastructure Week, and they announced it and announced it and announced it and announced it every week for 4 years and didn't do a damn thing.
Biden argued the United States is falling behind China, which is selling more electric vehicles.
The real question is whether we'll lead or we'll fall behind in the race to the future, or whether we'll build these vehicles and the batteries that go in them here in the United States or rely on other countries.
The centerpiece of Biden's EV plan is $100 billion in consumer rebates. Biden backs a further $10 billion in new tax credits for zero-emission, medium, and heavy-duty work vehicles. The White House also wants to encourage new battery production facilities, which are key to ramping up U.S. vehicle manufacturing, and build 500,000 EV charging stations by 2030. Biden is pushing for electric vehicles in the auto industry's heartland, trying to win over auto workers worried that more electric cars and trucks will mean fewer jobs. But Biden faces resistance from congressional Republicans, who are set to release a counterproposal to Biden's infrastructure plan this week.
On May 18 in Shenzhen, a 300-meter skyscraper suddenly tilted, terrifying hundreds of locals. What exactly caused this is unknown, given that there were no severe earthquakes or violent winds in the city. SEG Plaza guests informed they clearly felt the movement, as well as people outside saw the building roll. Panic began immediately. People ran out of the skyscraper as far as possible. The building was completely empty within 1.5 hours and finally closed. Movement around the high-rise was limited either.
A barrage of bad news continues to batter Bitcoin. China on Tuesday banned its financial institutions and payment companies from offering any services involving Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, including registrations, trading, clearing, and settlement. 3 Chinese industry bodies, the National Internet Finance Association of China, the China Banking Association, and the Payment and Clearing Association of China, said virtual currencies, quote, are not supported by real value, and railed against what they called speculative trading that is, quote, disrupting the normal economic and financial order. China has already banned crypto exchanges and initial coin offerings, but Chinese buyers can still get their hands on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Nevertheless, the statement was another drag on Bitcoin, which has lost about 1/3 of its value since hitting a high just under $65,000 in mid-April. Selling picked up pace last week when Elon Musk said Tesla would no longer accept Bitcoin as payment, citing the large energy use needed to mine Bitcoin. Other cryptos like Ethereum have seen their value decline as well, but not as much as Bitcoin. Bitcoin's lead as the world's biggest cryptocurrency has diminished, with its share of the crypto market dropping to 45% from 70% earlier this year, according to U.S. researcher Coinmetrics, as investors look for bigger returns from other so-called altcoins like Ethereum, Doge, and a number of other lesser-known cryptos.
A bipartisan measure that would create a commission of experts to investigate the deadly January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol suffered a significant setback on Tuesday when the top House Republican leader came out against it. In a statement, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said, quote, "I cannot support this legislation." McCarthy's rejection disappointed Democrats and Republicans who had hoped to put partisanship aside to probe the Capitol riot.
I'm looking at the Minority Leader's statement, and I'm pissed.
The Democratic chairman of the House Rules Committee, Massachusetts Representative James McGovern, on Tuesday tore into McCarthy for rejecting the probe.
And the top leader of the Republican Party comes out and said, "I can't do it. Can't support it." I mean, it is pathetic.
The bill was crafted jointly by Mississippi Democratic Representative Benny Thompson and New York Republican Representative John Katko, and would create a body modeled after the 9/11 Commission, which investigated the 2001 terror attacks. The January 6th riot came as hundreds of supporters of former President Donald Trump stormed the Capitol, interrupting the formal congressional certification of President Joe Biden's election victory, fighting with police, and leading to the deaths of 5 people, including a Capitol police officer. But in its aftermath, Republicans have tried to downplay the severity of the attack and distance themselves and the former president from its perpetrators.
There was no insurrection, and to call it an insurrection, in my opinion, is a bold-faced lie.
Republican Representative Andrew Clyde last week went even further, likening the mob that vandalized Congress to a normal tourist visit. Some Republicans had asked that the proposed commission also investigate unrelated forms of political violence, including protests against police brutality and a shooting in 2017 that injured Republican House Whip Steve Scalise. McCarthy is a close ally of Trump, and McGovern suggested that the minority leader was prioritizing the political whims of the ex-president, not the American people.
I assume what happened is Trump got wind that we were doing this and called up the minority leader and said, "I don't like it."
Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi told reporters she was not surprised by what she called the, quote, cowardice shown by some Republicans. Her party plans to take up the legislation in the House Wednesday, where they hold a slim majority. Its fate is less certain in the Senate, where it would likely require significant Republican support to clear the chamber.
In a boutique on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, fragrance expert Sue Phillips takes clients on an aromatic journey.
This is what's in here: pomegranate, strawberry, honeydew, and berry.
But these clients aren't looking for a perfume. They're COVID-19 long haulers who, after contracting the virus, lost their sense of smell. And in the case of Josh Goldenberg, a professional golfer who traveled from Florida to meet Phillips, also his sense of taste.
You know, the food that my friends are eating, our family is eating, tastes really good, and I can't really enjoy it with them. And, that's part of the reason why I wanted to come here, because if there is a chance that this, helps me going forward, I 100% want to take it.
To start the process, Phillips sets up an array of fragrances on a table, starting with the lighter notes such as rose, lavender, and mint. If there is no response...
Obviously, I know there's a scent here, but...
Yeah.
I can't identify it.
More robust scents, such as spice and musk, are used.
This one's pretty intense, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Is this the leather one?
Her goal, she says, is to clear the brain fog.
We're training people to, I like to say, smell with your brain. And it's almost as like there's a vibration and a frequency that goes from here, the olfactory bulb, to the limbic system. And then I can see their eyes light up, and I can just almost see the frequency, and I can see almost the fog lifting. And then they can start to smell again. And it's really amazing.
The process can take up to an hour, but in most cases, there is a breakthrough.
A little fruity.
A lot fruity.
Yep.
A lot fruity. Bravo, you did it.
The long-term effects of COVID-19 on the brain and body are still being researched, but a Harvard University professor who spoke to Reuters said Phillips may be onto something, since some smells can trigger memories and emotions in the brain. As for Phillips, she's just happy she can use her decades of experience to help those still struggling to stop and smell the roses.
The fact that I've been able to help people regain and rediscover their sense of smell has been just so emotional.
Wall Street slid into the close as upbeat news from the retail sector failed to stop the selling. The Dow fell 267 points, the S&P 500 dropped 35, the Nasdaq fell 75. Jeff Tomasulo of Vespula Capital is concerned.
Something is fundamentally in price action has changed where, every sell-off over the last, say, 2 years, right, or since the pandemic, right, year and a half, is that every sell-off has been met by massive buy-in and we get back to our all-time highs pretty quickly. Right now, I think the market is trying to find its footing to see if that's happening. Do we have enough buyers to push these, the NASDAQ higher, the S&P higher? I don't know if we do right now.
Walmart, the king of brick and mortar retail, raised full-year guidance after easily topping sales and profit forecasts. CEO Doug McMillon told analysts on a conference call that he's feeling more optimistic now than he was at the beginning of the year. Shares of Walmart climbed higher, but shares of its arch-rival Amazon moved lower. Revenues and earnings at Home Depot exceeded expectations as well, but the home improvement retailer said the retail landscape is too murky to predict how business could fare going forward. Disappointed investors sent the stock lower. Rounding out the retail detail, Macy's said America's speedy vaccination rollout is driving customers back to in-store shopping. The department store chain posted a surprise quarterly profit and boosted its full-year sales and profit outlook. Economic news weighed on investor sentiment. The pace of new housing construction projects tumbled more than expected in April as home builders grappled with soaring raw material costs. Housing starts plunged 9.5% last month.
So far, these were the latest news for today. Goodbye. Take care.